Well, we have been sent some heart-rending letters from other people suffering terribly during this bitter winter. Not only old people. What we've discovered this week is that children, whole families, are also at risk. On the Monday, the evening after last Sunday's programme, we had a phone call in our office from a young woman who seemed to be at breaking point. She was in floods of tears. She told us her name was Rosemary Schwartz and that she lived with her husband Ray and their 4 children in one room in a council flat in Peckham in southeast London. She said,
"It's freezing cold in our house. That's why we've all had to move into our bedroom. It's the only room we can keep warm. Our baby, Robert, is 10 months old. He has asthma. But it's so damp here, the walls are covered with mould, and I know the spores from the mould make his asthma worse. My little girl, Michelle, is 5, and she has asthma too. Laura is 6. She's had a cough ever since she had whooping cough 6 months ago. My doctor's already warned me that if we can't move somewhere warm and dry without this disgusting mould, Robert and Laura will end up in hospital. I've been back and back to the council, and I just don't know where to turn."
We said, so there's 6 of you living in one room?
Yes. My husband Ray had a job with the post office, but he's lost that. We're so depressed. Life doesn't seem worth living.
Has anyone been to inspect the mould and seen how damp and cold it is there?
Yes, Shelter arranged for an independent survey to be done.
This is the survey. It was actually written on December the 17th, which you'll remember was quite mild weather, but it mentions mould and water penetration and damp everywhere. Incidentally, the survey says that the council has tried to prevent this, but the work was bodged and in fact made it worse, if anything. The surveyor recommends ways of repairing the house, but his report ends...
Conclusion. I'm of the opinion that the premises are unfit for human habitation. The landlord is in breach of the duty of care in that the occupiers are not reasonably safe from personal injury or from damage to their property.
When we heard Rosemary's story on Monday night, we sent our researcher with some warm food for the children round to their home. You remember how cold that Monday was. We found them living on the top 2 floors of this rather old house. This was the children's bedroom. When we measured the temperature, it was 5 degrees Celsius. That's only just above freezing. And that'll be why that thick coat of ice was covering the window. You can see the mould covering the sill, and some of the water melted there. The ceiling was covered with the mould Rosemary described to us, and she told us how she kept trying to clean it off, but the spores kept reappearing more thickly than before, until in fact she had to give up. This is in the room in which they all live, which they managed to heat with a gas heater, but even so the temperature's only 59. Once again you see all the mould on the walls and the window, and that's little Michelle, who suffers from the asthma and who has to lie and sleep immediately underneath it. They have to sleep, live, play, all in the one room. There in the corner is Robert, aged 10 months, also suffering from asthma, also with those awful mould spores. So Gavin asked them how it had been the night before.
It was okay in this room. You could keep fairly warm once you had the gas on. But if you went out to go to the lavatory or anything like that, it was absolutely bitter. And it was all right when you actually went to sleep, but in the middle of the night, you were waking up, you were absolutely frozen stiff.
What's it like generally in the house?
Very, very cold. We often thought like perhaps it was a graveyard, because the whole house was literally freezing.
What about the windows? They seem to be very cold. Is that ice on them?
Yes, thick ice.
And how long have you had that?
Since the weather started deteriorating. If it gets a little bit mild outside, on some days it's more colder in here than it is out there.
Why is it that you're all huddled in this one room?
Because we literally couldn't let the children sleep in the other room. It was just unbearable.
Even when you put the heating on, it's only to take the chill off the air. It doesn't actually warm up, you know, the actual room itself. This is what... Sorry.
Why is that?
Basically, because we can't keep it on all the time, because of the finances. You know, the money I get from the Social Security, it just doesn't... We just can't afford to make ends meet.
How's all this affecting the children? I mean, it's damp, it's cold, you're very overcrowded.
They seem to be taking it quite well at the moment, but regards as like the asthma and things that we've been told at the hospital, especially for the little one, that he won't respond to medication, and they know that he will end up in hospital. And they were rather hoping that we'd be moved before the harsh weather set in, because that would lower his risk of going into hospital.
How are you all managing cramped together like this? Is that putting a strain on life together?
Simply our marriage. Well, marriage is near enough non-existent these days. We're always having arguments and, you know, differences of opinion.
What do you put that down to?
Basically, me being out of work, with the housing conditions and the finances.
Every single day I get up depressed. It's on my mind all the time. Keep thinking, you know, you go everywhere, you go social services, you go to the council, you tell them, you ask them to come up. And you're just talking to a brick wall because no one just won't even come up. It's not as though you're making up a story. The evidence is here, you know, and no one wants to know. No one wants to know.
Because I'm, at the moment, looking for work. And it's harder with my wife, looking after the children, because she finds it very hard and depressing.
Do you worry about it?
Yes, all the time. All the time. The thing is, she's often said to me she feels like putting her head in the gas oven and ending it. You know, there doesn't seem to be any end to it.
What is it that you're hoping for?
At the end of the day, somewhere decent to live in. A warm place that we can actually let our children play somewhere, or so we can just do what every other normal family does. Have normal family activities and just be the way we want to be, you know, just live properly.
While we were there, the family's GP arrived, Dr. Darby. He's been treating the family, Mrs. Schwartz, for depression, the children for whooping cough and asthma. So we asked him his opinion of their housing conditions.
I'm quite appalled by the plight that they are suffering. Entire family of 6 huddled into one room. And as we can see, peeling wallpapers, fungus, spore-bearing fungus, which is detrimental to chest and lung diseases, and sheets of ice on the windows. In 1986 in this country, for family to live this way is just beyond my imagination.
What do you think should be done for this family now?
Well, unfortunately, Schwartzes are not the only family. I'm sure every GP in this area knows at least one, maybe more families in this situation. There are 2 things I think. A, Schwartz family should be, as a matter of urgency, rehoused. And something has to be done for long-term housing shortage problem in this area, where many like them are suffering equally badly.
Now, Laura, who's age 6, has a bad cough. Michelle, who's 5, suffers from asthma. And Robert, who's only 10 months, has asthma. What will the consequences be for them if they're not able to be moved and have to go on living in this condition?
Either one of them will get a very nasty attack of asthma, what is known as status asthmaticus, where the spores from fungus would have contributed a great deal, or they could catch pneumonia. Both would have serious consequences.
We confirm that opinion with Dr. John Gleeson, who is at King's College Hospital. He's a paediatrician who has also treated Laura, Michelle and Robert. But in fact, he wrote to the council last October.
I've known this family for the past year, and I'm appalled at their housing conditions, considering their medical condition.
And he warned the council then that the children would probably end up in hospital unless they could be rehoused somewhere warm and dry. Obviously, we didn't want the Schwartz family to risk another night in that dreadful house, so we contacted Trust House Forte, and they immediately offered their help. They allowed the Schwartzes to move into a flat in their Kensington Close hotel until we could talk to the local council and ask them to find something bearable for the family. Well, the children were thrilled, as you can imagine, to be out of their home, to be somewhere where, as Ray had said, they could live like normal children in a normal family. But obviously, we had to ask Southwark Council to find somewhere else for them, so we did. And on Wednesday of this week, the Housing Committee held a special meeting to discuss this family. And on Thursday, the chairman of the committee, Alan Crane, said to us,
I know there's dampness in this house. Basically, the repairs should have been done. But I don't have any evidence that the children are in danger. If someone provides me with evidence, I will act on it.
well, we said, how about this independent report by Shelter? Is that evidence? They say it's unfit for human habitation, and they say that the family living there aren't reasonably safe. And also their paediatrician, he says that he's appalled at their housing conditions, and unless they're moved, he says the baby may well end up in hospital, and their GP says the same. If this house had been repaired properly back in October, the family might not be in this danger now.
It's wrong that anyone should live in these conditions, but we have 12,000 properties that need repairs urgently. We're in a crisis situation. We don't have the money. There must be 1,000 Schwartz families. We're fighting a battle we cannot win.
However, all this seemed clearly to have been evidence because later that same day the council came back to us. This time they said,
We're going to conduct a full survey on the house, and until that is complete, we'll put the family up in a local hotel, the London Park Hotel. We're glad to help, and now we're making progress.
and it's already made all the difference to the Schwartzes. Rosemary told us.
We've been able to make plans now. We have some hope again. Ray has even got a job interview with London Transport as a bus driver. Baby Robert is contented now he doesn't have to sleep in 3 layers of clothes and extra blankets. He can be like any other baby. So much has happened this week, I'm stunned. But I'm worried that the council may make us go back to that house while they repair it. And I couldn't bear that.
Well, obviously not. With only one room they can live in and all that mould and ice, the risk to their health would be quite unacceptable. But we wondered why we are still telling this kind of story on this programme. Other countries have much harder winters than we do, Scandinavia, for example. But their death rate hardly rises at all in the winter, whereas ours shoots up. Maybe it's because we don't have a proper policy to fight what is called cold weather poverty. That's the families, be they young or old, who simply can't afford to keep warm. Last week's special £5 payments you saw in the headlines are clearly not enough. So isn't it time that all the charities who try and deal with these families, like Help the Aged and Age Concern and Shelter and Child Poverty Action Group and the single parent groups and the disabled groups, should meet the government ministers responsible to work out a plan and then put it in action? Because clearly local councils like Southwark have such a huge problem they feel quite helpless. But in the meantime, what can these families themselves do?
As we showed you last Sunday, there are practical steps to keep warm that apply to all the family. They're contained in this special leaflet put out by Help the Aged. You can write to them for one, or to us.
And can we remind you of their emergency number for any old person who needs help now? It's free phone 0800 289 404. They're open until midnight tonight and all week during office hours.
Well, maybe the weather will get a little warmer this week. Let's hope so. But unless we sort out this desperate problem of cold weather poverty now, the next time it freezes, we'll be just as astonished, just as unprepared, and tragically we may have just as many old people who die of hypothermia and little children whose lives are put at risk.